What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with NIO, Tesla, SPY, Nvda, and the QQQ. I want to talk about how the technicals are looking so far and some very important things to be watching for, and what's happening with this tomorrow as we have some very important earnings for tomorrow. So I'm going to break all that down and talk about some very, very big data and then talk about some Fed speakers as we have some big ones coming out over the next couple of days. But before I do anything like this, though, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. This offer ends in just about 2 weeks from now, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with NIO in the markets. NIO closed very flat, up 0.12%. The market got a very, very nice pump to start us off before it ended up slowing down. We closed very flat on SPY. So NIO basically tracks SPY and QQQ, although QQQ was a little bit weaker as we saw Nvidia sink alongside Apple to cause it to close kind of red. Now, with these different tickers, I just wanted to mention that the market's looking very stationary for the time being as we're awaiting some very, very big earnings. And we could maintain this trend for tomorrow until some big earnings come out. So I'm going to break down what the earnings are, why this is going to cause a big move tomorrow, depending on how things look. And then it's going to affect how the market ends up moving. First, let's talk about what these earnings are. So tomorrow before the market opens, okay, we have ASML, we have Morgan Stanley, we have many other banks from Ally Bank, not to mention the NASDAQ, all announcing earnings before the market opens. Those are going to be kind of important, especially for Morgan Stanley and a couple of those other banks. And then what's going to be even more important for the markets and more impactful, in my opinion, are going to be the big earnings coming out after the market closes, as we have Tesla and Netflix announcing their earnings tomorrow. Now, Tesla's going to be a big one. It's going to cause a big move most likely. So you have to be prepared for this and you have to be ready. As far as data goes for the markets, I just want to mention that tomorrow we have the 30-year mortgage rate coming out. So we're going to find out what this is looking like and how expensive this is going to be on average. Then we also have some building permits data all coming out in the morning. And besides that, there's nothing else too big in terms of the data side. But then a few hours after the market opens, we have Waller, Williams, and Bowman all giving speeches alongside Page and Harker. So lots of Fed speakers. We will see what they end up saying. And then later on, okay, we also have the 20-year bond auction coming out. So if this shows an increase, yields could start going up and this could slow down the markets. If not, I mean, it may not affect the market that much. But the last time the 30-year bond auction came out, this caused a big move in the market. So make sure you're prepared for this just to be safe. And last but not least, guys, I just want to remind you all that going into Thursday, we have initial jobless claims and Jerome Powell giving a speech. He's going to be giving a speech at noon for Eastern time. So we will see what he says on Thursday. I just want to give you guys a heads up about that. So we have a bunch of Fed speakers tomorrow and then some bond auctions data coming out. And the biggest thing is going to be these earnings, especially Tesla's earnings after the market closes. Now, for NIO, there's this news that came out that on October 11th, NIO Netherlands launched its 8th battery swap station. And this is good news for them because this is a part of the Netherlands and they have the 27th power swap station in Europe. So by opening more of these, they're going to get more exposure and they're going to be continuing just get more and more individuals engaged and they're going to get more and more growth thanks to it. So this makes me very excited and very optimistic for the future that's coming for NIO. And I believe that there are blue skies coming as NIO is showing immense growth and potential. There's also the news that came out that NIO kicked off the ET5 sedan deliveries in Europe, beginning in 4 separate markets. And then with that potentially happening, this is more good news for them because they're gaining more popularity over there. Also going to be finding its way to different markets from Germany to many other countries in Europe. And as they continue to grow, their solid state batteries have been a hit so far as they're continuing to expand their capabilities. So this is good news for NIO. NIO is continuing to grow in Europe, and the expansion of their solid state batteries could incentivize more and more improvements in their ranges and things like that to help them out for sales and etc. Now, when it comes to NIO, Deutsche Bank has a buy rating that's maintained for NIO. Price price ratio is kind of flat right now. And last but not least, NIO has a tendency of being green about 56% of the time on Wednesdays. So that's one of the best days of the week for NIO historically. So let's hope NIO does well. And besides that, we're actually not seeing a big change. We actually saw only 18 million in volume, so very low volume. So we will see if NIO makes a big move. We are getting kind of tight for the market, so I'm expecting something interesting. Now, what happens to NIO could be dependent on earnings coming out, the big bank earnings. So if we get some bad earnings, we could start off kind of weak. If we do start off very weak, I think the market could bounce just like how it did today. If we start off too strong, the market could pump and then eventually come back down. And I think we're going to be closing kind of flat. So it all depends on earnings. I think NIO is going to stay range bound tomorrow between 8.25 as support and about 8.7 as resistance. And I think that what's very likely is it's going to just maintain this trend, but still close a little bit in the green, very close to like 8.6. So I believe NIO may pump towards 8.7 depending on earnings, maybe a little higher at 8.8 or so, reject off that and close kind of green. Or NIO is going to just kind of like come down a bit depending on earnings to like 8.25 to 8.3, then bounce and make its way back up towards 8.6 to close kind of green. We have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure has developed, and there is potential upside coming for NIO as we have these imbalances, which could attract it towards the $9 area. So I see upside coming for NIO. I think it's going to close green tomorrow, but it may be a little flat because of the indecision associated with earnings just to start us out. So it could pop and then like come down and still close kind of green, just a little bit in the green, or something different can happen. But that's what I'm seeing for NIO for the time being. Looking at SPY, something very similar is happening to SPY because we have this inverse head and shoulders, but we're basically very stationary, not really doing a whole lot. And we're just getting tighter and tighter as time goes on. So it all depends on earnings. If we get some very, very strong earnings tomorrow morning, we could see SPY push for 438.5 one more time. If we fail to break it, then we have some tough resistance up there that could cause SPY to reject and come right back down and still close kind of flat. If we get bad earnings tomorrow morning, we could see SPY come down towards 433.5 and if not 433. And if buyers step in, then we could see an attempt for it to just close very flat. And I think that's very likely as the last few days have been very flat. Not a whole lot has been going on. And the market's very sideways and chopping, and it may just remain kind of flat in anticipation of these earnings. Now for Tesla, we have a bullish divergence. Tesla has a nice double bottom like structure. So I think Tesla's going to try to pop towards this 260 area, come back down and close kind of flat. That is the most likely possibility. It's going to have a somewhat green close. I think there are going to be some buyers stepping in right before earnings, but that doesn't guarantee anything about after earnings. And we're going to be watching to see how this affects it. Now, as far as Apple goes, I just wanted to mention that Apple has a large head and shoulders right here. So let me just pull up the 4-hour time frame. We have a head and shoulders that is developed, and it is looking a little weaker on the 4-hour time frame. And we can see Apple has been downtrending quite a bit. So we're going to be looking for a little pop towards this 177, almost 178 area. It could happen again depending on how earnings open up, and it may just continue to downtrend towards 176.5. Apple has been making lower highs and lower lows, so there's a good chance of this thing potentially coming down. I believe it's very probable that Apple's going to slow down towards 176.5 again. And also starting to favor downside a little bit more as Apple's looking a bit weaker on this time frame. I believe it's going to attempt to rebound towards 178 first, then reject and come down towards 176.5 and close kind of flat. I think the QQQ is going to do something similar. It's looking very flat as well. I think it's going to try to push up again towards 370 in the morning, then come right back down towards 368. If that fails us, we could see 366 be tested, followed by a bounce and a very flat close. I think it's going to be very stationary as we approach these earnings, and I think that earnings will be the bigger determiner of how we end up moving. And now Nvda has a potential head and shoulders on the 4-hour time frame right here. Someone else could argue, and this is not a guarantee, but there's always the possibility of another head and shoulders right here. We have like a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder forming. But either way, whether that's accurate or not, Nvidia is looking a bit bearish. Now, could you interpret this as like a falling wedge? I mean, yes, but it's not very clean because of this wick down here. So I would say that Nvidia is looking a bit more bearish. It's going to likely pop towards 442 tomorrow, maybe like after we end up opening or something like that. And then we could get a rejection, come right back down towards this 430 area and still close a little bit in the red. So it's still a real possibility for Nvidia. Anyways, I just wanted to add that looking at, let me just double check the VIX. Okay, the VIX also has a very interesting formation right here. If you look at the 4-hour time frame, the VIX has this bearish divergence, came back down, but I was trying to hold the 50 EMA. So it's kind of like indecisive, not really doing too much. It did uptrend just a little bit today, but overall it's still kind of flat. You could argue that the VIX has a potential inverse head and shoulders right here. Maybe it hasn't fully played out, and we could be developing another one. So like right here, there could be another one forming here where we kind of like sink down tomorrow because the market pumps up a little bit. Then we see the VIX bounce, the market starts selling off, and we have this unfilled gap also around 19. So I could see the VIX drop and then pump because the market may end up kind of like pumping and then dropping over time. So there's a possibility of that looking at the VIX. The dollar has a bullish divergence right here. It's also getting very tight. So if you see the dollar end up breaking this 106.29 area, we could see this thing try to push up higher and try to fill these imbalances around 106.5. So I could see a bounce on the dollar. It is a real possibility thanks to the bullish divergence, and that in turn, sorry about that, guys. That in turn could cause the market to potentially slow down. So just be prepared for that. Anyways, going back to NIO, like I said before, we have a nice accumulation structure that could be developing right here. There is potential for it to try to bounce, and we may be stuck in this range for some time. So I believe NIO is going to make an attempt to try to either pump. It depends on how we open because it depends on earnings. But I do believe NIO is going to close green tomorrow. So if we do drop, look for some buyers to step in at 8.25 to push it back up. If we pump immediately, look for it to pump very nicely towards 8.8 or so, then come back down and still close kind of green. So I believe there's very likely a chance that we're going to see some upside for NIO. I think NIO is going to close a little flat, but somewhere in the green, and then it's going to be impacted by some more consumer discretionary earnings. All right, so that's one after this video. Thank you all so much for listening. Have an absolutely spectacular day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you, and peace out.